pattern seems to be that where there is a shared strong feeling of victimization by a group and a people, then either they come together and attempt secession, or when their elites decide to seize the day and the opportunity and push for secession, they tend to support it. So we have some that are driven by the people themselves, requesting that secession, as we saw in the case of Isaac Adaka Boro, and as you can see, is happening today in Nigeria, that so many groups are calling for secession, or at least a few groups are, or in the case, as I'm suggesting, of the Boko-Haram issue, where it may have started as a religious expression of discontent, but it was easily directed politically into something that could threaten the integrity of the Nigerian state, simply because of political manipulation. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. President Goodluck Jonathan alluded to it. In fact, so many commentators have alluded to the Boko Haram situation as having a political dimension, as having a grievance dimension, and as having a criminal dimension. You can say the same thing of the Niger-Delta struggle, that there is a grievance dimension, a criminal dimension, and a political dimension. In fact, some people just say it's the politics of grievance and greed. So, as it was in the beginning, so it is now. I wonder where this leaves us on the issue of corruption. In the beginning, the First Republic was actually sacked because elements within the army were unhappy with the corrupt behavior of the politicians of the day. Those who led the coup in 1966 alluded to the 10%ers, ministers of graft, ministers of loot is what they called them, that they were just there for what they could take, and that they struck because of that. If anyone looks at the history of the military administrations thereafter, coup after coup, each person who comes in talks about the corruption of the administration before them as one of the reasons that they struck and they took over. So if we're still talking about corruption today, then what really has changed? As it was in the beginning, so it is now. What about the issue of jobs and the economy? It was all about resources in the beginning. It was all about development in the beginning. It was all about development not being felt by the ordinary people, that gave rise to the need for them to want to do something. It was all about the tyranny of the majority against the interests of the minority. Again, so people from minority groups feeling that the Yorubas, the Igbos, the Hausas have dominated everything, and they're not really caring or listening to their voice. It's all of these factors put together show us that not much has changed. If you look at even the actors involved, the same actors who in their 20s held up a radio station in order to broadcast something very different to the president's speech. Imagine holding up a whole radio station at gunpoint and forcing them to play your own speech instead of the president's speech. The same characters are still the ones who are commenting on what is happening in Nigeria today. The people who were directors general of parastatals then are still the people who are prominent in politics today. The people who are the super permanent secretaries of yesterday are still the ones that we call whenever we want responsible people in society to come and speak about anything. So what has happened? Why is it the same group that have managed to retain control of the state? We talk about General Yakubu Gowon, who was barely 30 when he became president. Murtala Mohammed was barely 30 when he became head of state. You can say that for most of the rest of that generation who shaped our history. So what's wrong with the young people today? What is the difference? And yet we come and we complain about oppression. It sounds as though we need to learn a different response. Because if we keep doing the same thing and being unable to change from what it was like in the beginning, and we still find ourselves in that place today, then something is wrong. We haven't found the answer yet. I'd like to invite you to think very carefully at what you can do about the situation in Nigeria today. Because secession and the use of force has never worked in our history. In fact, it has only worsened and it has only escalated the issue. Thank you.